Thank you, Madam Chairman. Also, I want to congratulate you on your new position as chairman of this committee and express that I look forward to continuing to work with you. To the good senator from Wisconsin, we're flaring off huge amounts of natural gas in my state. We would love nothing better than to bring more of it to you and to others. And my question to our panel, starting with Mr. Szymanski, is right now the European Union gets about a third of its natural gas from Russia, and I would like each of you to tell me how you think we can help the EU reduce its dependence on Russian gas.
Well, again, Senator, EIA is a statistical and agency and not a policy agency. So I'm not going to offer policy prescriptions other than to say that all of the above energy strategy seems to make sense for the United States, and it might make sense for other countries. One thing that I can say in terms of EIA's data is that the growth in supply that we're seeing over the last few years is extraordinary, and it leaves an opportunity for both growth in domestic consumption of natural gas as well as exports.
Sir?
Thank you for the question. Well, the problem what we have is that we have a fragmented and closed markets in some of the EU countries, and Lithuania is one of such countries. As I said, we are dependent 100% on supply from Gazprom. So what we have to do as our homework to address this problem is to diversify, to create alternative routes of supply, and that is our LNG floating ship, which will help to bring gas from alternative direction. But then there is a question of where do we get this gas, because of course diversification would serve already the purpose of having a more objective price and for a monopoly not being able to charge this margin of a closed market. But on the other hand, increased and newly created global gas market would definitely help to bring down those prices globally. So this would be definitely the direction which all actions on the part of U.S. government and Congress would help, and specifically liberalizing of LNG exports.
Thank you, Minister. Dr. Montgomery.
Yes, I think that U.S. exports of LNG, wherever they go in the world, will help to reduce Europe's dependence on Russia. Even if our exports go to Asia and are competing with exports that Russia might be sending through a pipeline to China, that frees up other gas to move to Europe, so that we look in the long run in the global market where if we put gas into it, it is going to be benefiting Europe eventually. And that Europe would then be facing either a chastened Russia who has to accept lower prices for gas or be less physically dependent on the Russian gas. And I'm not quite sure which way it would play out.
Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Goldwyn?
6 steps, Senator. First, we should encourage the European Union to complete the integration of a gas market so you can move gas from Spain all the way to Kiev. Second, we should encourage...
Well, they have a fair amount of that in place already, don't they?
A fair amount, but actually it's very hard to move gas from point to point. Although they've eliminated the destination clauses, there isn't enough pipeline capacity to move from the Iberian Peninsula into the rest of Europe, so they need more pipelines there. And you have to negotiate the entry and exit price at each point along the pipeline. So it's, it can be up to 10 steps to figure out what it is, and they're not transparent about capacity of those pipelines either. So there's more work that they could do, which would really make it easier for LNG to get into that system from whatever terminal it comes into. So the gas market's number one. Interconnections, I would say, are number two. Getting prices right internally, which with Ed Chow has talked about at length, is important both to control demand and also to attract investment. Promoting indigenous gas, shale gas in countries in Europe. Enhancing energy efficiency and renewables in places where that's appropriate in Europe, and accelerating the consideration of applications to export U.S. LNG.
Mr. Chow, before you answer, would you all put that graph up, because this will explain some things that you all are talking about. This is the pipeline system in Europe. Both of you all are commenting on it,
Well, and I think that's an interesting point,
Would you
particularly with the
please, yeah,
energy
yeah.
ministers meeting now in, is it April, on this very issue?
Could you all explain, or just, that's fine, just hold it up there. The blue are the already constructed gas pipelines, correct? Staff? Yes, and the red are proposed oil? Gas? Mr. Goldwyn and Mr. Chow, look at this map and just comment 1 minute in answer of Senator Hoeven's question, which I think is important. Is Europe integrated with its gas pipeline? Go ahead, Dr. Chow.
It is not, and for two basic reasons. One, the infrastructure is not necessarily connected as well as it needs to be. And two is market practices. The fact that you have incumbents in some of these countries who are also trying to protect their own monopoly power and not let gas and electricity flow freely across the continent is a big problem in Europe. And you're right, Senator, the US-EU Energy Council will be meeting next month, I believe, in Europe.
Right, and so this is certainly an area where they can do some substantive work.
I would add one more, Madam Chair, if am I allowed, which is that they really need to look at developing further their own energy resources in Europe beyond renewables, which they do a good job in. But why not look at the resources, particularly in oil and gas, but also coal, that is in Western Europe already that they're not taking advantage of, rather than importing those resources from faraway places. That's something they can do to help themselves very much. I think I have a sense of irony that it is the Central and Eastern European countries who are most dependent on Russia for its oil and gas today, who wants to take the strongest position on Russia because of the aggression that it has caused in Ukraine, as opposed to the Western European countries who are, by definition, more diversified, who are reluctant to respond to Russia's aggression. So something that we can do to get our allies and ourselves on the same page in that area is certainly something that's worth doing in the coming days and weeks.
Madam Chairman,
A very important insight, yes.
and I apologize, I know I'm over my time, but if I could beg your indulgence, on that point, Mr. Chow, and maybe Mr. Goldwyn wants to weigh in here as well, I've visited with companies like Exxon, Chevron, Shell, and others that are willing to do more, both onshore but also offshore in the Black Sea, as well as companies like Statoil that are doing a lot of oil and gas development, obviously in the North Sea and so forth. What about their ability in the near term here to provide more natural gas to these countries? And is there something we can do to help make that happen?
Well, I would say with respect to the Norwegians, they do have surge capacity to move more gas, and at times over the last year and a half or so, they have been the larger supplier of gas over Gazprom. So they have the ability. There's really nothing we need to do in order to help them capture that market. But on the other 2 points, I mean, I would echo what Ed Chow has said. We could be a lot more forthright and and less timid about encouraging unconventional and conventional gas development in Europe. I've been to 8 of those countries trying to teach safe shale gas practices to regulators over there, and they don't have private ownership, they don't have access to infrastructure, and in places like Bulgaria, you've got Gazprom actively undermining development there. So technical assistance, getting regulators comfortable, those are things we are doing, but we could do a lot more of. And the second one, I think it's the point Ed made and that Chair Landrieu has made with the map is really important. The European story is that we eliminated destination clauses, we're done. We have an integrated gas market. It's just not the case. There's much more work that needs to be done, and I've talked to my colleagues at the State Department, encouraged them to put that at the top of their agenda, because you get that market unblocked. You get more connections between there. You don't strand Iberian gas. You get connections between Lithuania and Latvia. You can move a lot more gas around that continent a lot faster than it takes to build a new LNG export terminal. You can use the ones that they've got.